Hello, I'm Jason Higley, and I'm going to speak with you about the signal that was received from Proxima Centauri, a signal that was named by the Breakthrough Initiatives Project founded by Yuri Milner. It was named the Breakthrough Listen Candidate 1, or BLC1, and they found it using the Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia, which recently was renamed Muriang, just as an FYI. And a number of signals were detected within a 30-hour period of observing runs that appear to be in the direction of the next closest star after our sun, Proxima Centauri. A lot of questions surround the nature of this group of signals, and the people involved in investigating it are reportedly writing 2 papers related to it. So we may get some definitive answers in the very near future, and one has to wonder, why are they writing 2 papers and not 1? The candidate signal was recorded in April and May of 2019, and it was found after a undergraduate student was doing some research over the summer, and it is reported that he may have found the signals in either during the summer or up to October 2020. It's still not clear. The signals, I should say plural, they were contained within 30 hours of observing runs, and were seen at 5 intervals of time within it. Because of the very limited radio bandwidth of the signal, a narrow signal around 982.002 megahertz, it is widely felt that this signal could only be from an artificial source, because natural sources tend to have much broader frequency energy dispersion. This signal may turn out to be human-made radio interference, and indeed one of the people on the project said that it was 99 point, let me go look at that up. It was 99.9% likely to be RFI. So that was a quote. So it's likely to have been a human source in the eyes of the people doing the project. But what I'm going to do right now is speak about the different aspects of the signal and what I think about it. So this signal, the researchers are currently trying to track down the possible sources, and according to some other people, some of the candidates out of the 5 detections have already been eliminated, i.e. they were local RFI. In my opinion, this seems to weigh very heavily against the rest of the candidates, as there must have been some similar signal characteristics for them to all have been originally considered as being from the same source. I think a big open question amongst many is, what is it that differentiates the surviving candidate signals from the eliminated ones in those specific observing sessions? Wikipedia incorrectly states that an apparent shift in its frequency is consistent with the Doppler effect caused by the movement of Proxima b, a planet of Proxima Centauri. And why that's incorrect is that we don't know what the Doppler shift was at the time that the signal was detected, because we don't know what the Proxima Centauri b's Doppler shift was at that time. According to some of the people who are the only ones who have the Doppler data on Proxima b, that data is proprietary, and I've looked around and there are no ephemerides or information about the periodicity that are out on the internet, where somebody could say, oh, it was approaching us or receding from us at the time that these Proxima Centauri signals may have occurred. So I think there's a problem with it, and it's incorrect to say that they were caused, what was viewed in the apparent shift of the frequency being consistent with the Doppler effect. It isn't, as so far as I can tell. That the signal was not seen when pointing the telescope away from the target lends little credence to it possibly being a source in the sky, and the reason for that is, it is if you point a telescope at a certain location, you can get the same RFI if you point away and point back at the spot, if the RFI source is in a side lobe or is at the same location that you're on the ground with a wider, it's going to be it couldn't be in the field of view of the telescope or the side lobes of the telescope, or in this case the antenna, and still be seen, and it would look like it was on the sky each time you tipped away and pointed back. So I think that when the off pointing of the radio telescope is good, but it is not. It doesn't rule out RFI if the RFI is in the side lobes of the scope, because that can be over a larger area than just a pinpoint spot on the sky. If it's a noisy chip or a computer chip or some antenna from a cell phone tower that emits at 982 megahertz, which there are such things that exist. So there have been stories out there about this being possibly military traffic, because they're up in that spectrum, and a few others, but a few other sources. But without any information about the signal, the way it looks, other information, we can't, it's speculation to say that it was those things either. So that has survived the breakthrough listen rejection criteria is a very good thing, especially since they have, some strict criteria that have rejected all other candidates prior to these. So obviously that's a good thing, and of course we look forward to the papers when they come out. So we know the signal was present for around 3 hours, and it was present in 5 30-minute on pointings and not at all in interspersed off pointings. We also know that it had a positive drift rate that, and that it's unmodulated. Now, some people have incorrectly stated that the positive drift rate of the signal doesn't mean they think it means that this is not something that we would normally see. And if an object was approaching the Earth, which is entirely possible in this case, if it was in Proxima Centauri's system, that it could go up in frequency. In fact, we would expect it to go up in frequency if it was moving toward us. So we know the system itself is moving toward us at 22.2 kilometers per second, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the viewing was in a 16-minute arc-minute circle around Proxima Centauri, and which is like half the width of a full moon. So there are a number of stars in the background that, in theory, these could have been from, but I think that it may be possible to show that a lot of those would not be moving at a relative velocity that was that mimicked how this signal looked. Of course, you know, we don't have the files to look at yet, so we'll see what comes out. Now, what does this signal mean, right? What does it mean? What could ETs be telling us if they were intentionally sending a signal around this frequency? Some people are saying, well, you know, it's not modulated, so there's no information there. But something that's interesting about the signal is that it's very close to 3 times what the spin flip emissions frequency is of deuterium. And I'll explain that a little bit. So deuterium, which is a naturally occurring thing in the universe, is called heavy hydrogen, and sometimes, and it is when it transitions from one state to another, it emits radio waves, and that they emit the radio waves at 327.384 megahertz, right? So if you multiply that times 3, it brings you to 982.152 megahertz. So the difference, that's only 150 hertz of difference away from the signal that was received. So that's smaller than the width of an FM radio station on Earth, which is 200 hertz. So in other words, it's 150 kilohertz of difference. So in other words, in order to shift the frequency enough to match 3 times deuterium, they would need to be moving toward us at 45 kilometers per second. And if you account for Proxima Centauri's approaching speed of 22.2 kilometers per second, which is about half of what you need, that shifts the signal 72.72 kilohertz. And all you need to do is have an object that's moving enough to shift the signal another 72.28 kilohertz. And that's an additional 23.59 kilometers per second. A speed that's very similar to what an object in orbit around the star Proxima Centauri could look like. It's feasible that a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri could be moving at just the right speed toward us to shift the signal to exactly the 3 times deuterium's frequency. So in my view, that would be a smoking gun. If we can show that one of the planets, I mean, it's already in the ballpark enough that it should be very suspicious already, but currently the orbital estimated speeds of a Proxima B planet could be match that speed in certain parts of its orbit, but in other parts of its orbit it wouldn't match that speed. So it would be very interesting to try to get the data for the radio velocity data for Proxima B and possibly Proxima C, which is a speculated Proxima C is a tentative detected planet that may be consistent with noise. In other words, it might not be there, but they have to do a lot more follow-up observations to pin that one down. So whoever these, if this was a civilization or some kind of AI or something, that this, and they were sending a signal that was at the deuterium frequency, um, which is called heavy hydrogen, as I was saying before, hydrogen 2, right? The deuterium atom is called a deuteron, and it contains one proton and one neutron. And it's believed by scientists that deuterium in nature could only have stemmed from the Big Bang nucleosynthesis. So what would ETs be telling us? Well, one thing, we know that the Proxima Centauri star system is actually part of a bigger 3-star system, Alpha, Beta, and then Proxima Centauri. So it's a 3-star system, and maybe these guys are telling us, hey, we're, here's 3 times deuterium, and we're in a 3-star system. I'm speculating, and I'm going to speculate a bit more. If the breakthrough listen candidate 1 is a message, what is it telling us? If it's not human-made RFI, radio interference, then it would be an intentional message telling us that, hey, there's a civilization at the nearest star after the sun, and it's they're the closest star to us after the sun, so that, hey, they're really close. It's telling us that they have technology and they can manipulate their environment and make tools to make transmitters and antennas and produce electricity and communicate. It tells us that they have science and astronomy and are likely have been monitoring us too for probably ever since we started making radio, and maybe even longer. And they want us to know that they're there, which, there could be a number of reasons for this that aren't necessarily good things, and they aren't necessarily bad things either. But I'm going to go over a couple of them that I've thought about when I think about the SETI subject in general, because I've written a book on it, which you cannot find on the internet because it's not available. And but anyway, I made a book 10 years ago, and I give it to people for free who ask for it. So anyway, let's see, we got a bunch of reasons that I can think of why a civilization in general would be sending a beacon or saying, hey, here we are, is, one thing a lot of people don't know is that Proxima b, if there were a civilization there, it would be many times harder for them to get out of their gravity well than it would be for us. I've seen some writings on the internet that would require much higher energy requirements to become spacefaring for them. So, one hypothesis one might have is that they, if they can't get into space, maybe they could be asking for help to get out of their gravity well or something. Perhaps opening communications helps them to better identify threats like us, right? From possible, machine AI creators like us, right? We're making AIs now, and they're going to keep getting more intelligent, and eventually they may get beyond our control, and maybe they want to understand the threat better by communicating with us as a form of reconnaissance or to get data to act on. Maybe they're interested in a trading network for information or for merchant goods. Since they're so close, in theory, we could send stuff their way if we, learn a little bit more. But maybe since they've been around for somewhat longer than us, most likely, they probably could even pass the technology along that would allow us to visit them. So who knows? Maybe they're doing it for scientific curiosity about the customs of other civilizations, or primitives like us and want to get some new, unique data. Um, they could be making danger warnings about, other species. Like you put out a beacon to open up communications, and then, send the main message on nearby radio frequencies, or you know, or other means, by laser or something. And so, danger warnings about other species or regions of space to avoid, or no trespassing signs. Don't come over here with your biological biohazard planet that you have there. And another thing I can think of is it may be a directional beacon that lets everyone who's from their home planet know where the home planet is, or a beacon to others of their kind. It could be a form of intimidation or psychological warfare in the opening of a propaganda campaign. It can be spacecraft telemetry that they use to communicate with their fleet. It could be some kind of benefactor race thing, happy love fest galactic internet thingy, right? Or maybe it's recruitment for a cause where they join our alliance to achieve, fill in the blank, whatever their goal is. Maybe they're recruiting to join a coalition or with them. It could be jamming to block out what an enemy race has to say. And it could be a galactic weather report beacon, with nearby frequencies again, warning about impending supernovas, or who knows? It could be something along those lines. We really don't know. There are infinite possible rationales one could think of, but those are a couple that come to mind. The BLC candidate was announced in December 2020 as possibly coming from Proxima Centauri, but the reports is that it was leaked by somebody, and there are, so one has to ask the question: why was it leaked, right? What are the agendas and motivations of the individuals or individual who leaked it, and who benefits from the publicity surrounding this? I have a bunch of speculative answers based on some research that I've done online, but I'm not going to go into those because for a number of reasons, I'm just not going to go into that. But that said, you just have to ask, what motivation would this person have? Was it for self, aggrandizement, or were they just accidentally discussing it with somebody who is inclined to leak these things to others? So an original researcher didn't intend for it to come out, and that somebody else maybe felt, like they felt obligated that they had to, go to the media to a sense of public duty to prevent a cover-up or something. Who knows? But in the end, what matters is are the intentions good or bad? And we'll know soon enough. When these papers come out, we're going to know all the specs related to the signal, we hope, and that they tell us, and they give us the curves so that we can see, what the data is composed of. And that way other eyes on it can, rule out or, also support their claims. So we're looking forward to seeing those. And for right now, it's just it's a candidate or a bunch of candidate signals, and we should learn pretty soon what the nature of them are. Was it human-made radio interference, or was it ETs? We know for certain it was artificial, but it was either us or them. Very good. Thank you for listening, and I'm Jason Higley, and feel free to subscribe to my channel, and please like my video. I want to make a lot more. Thank you, and best wishes to all. Bye, and Happy New Year. Take care.